alligator.
That's enough of that.
Hello, and welcome to Shaking and Sipping. Now, this is the show where we usually shake up a cocktail or other mixed drink following the IBA's list of official cocktails, dig into the history, take a sip, build some variations, talk about how they work, whether the drink deserves its place on the list. This is not that. This is just a one-off episode. I'm a big fan of the motion pictures, and I'm a big fan of drinks, and so I like when these two things coalesce. A while ago on Twitter, if you follow, pointed out the incredibly weird stuff with the Gibson in the film The Net, which doesn't really make sense because it keeps coming up and characters order a Gibson on the beach in Mexico, and that's how they have like a meet cute, though it's fake and it's a thing. I figured it out later, I think. I think it's meant to be a reference to North by Northwest because that's what Cary Grant orders on the train. But this is not about that. This is about the fact that I just saw Brett Morgen's really interesting film, Moonage Daydream, in IMAX. Really interesting film. If you're a David Bowie fan, I would recommend it, with the caveat that it's probably not necessarily the film you expect if you don't know what it is going in. It's not really a documentary. It's not really a biopic. It's a sort of collage of interviews, photos, films, concerts, all stitched together through a live and studio hybrid soundtrack with remixes, and it does go chronologically, so you get the story, but it doesn't really go into details. It's all about sort of feelings and places. Like, you could read 2 paragraphs on his Wikipedia entry and get the same amount of actual details, but you get feelings and impressions throughout what it's like to listen to David Bowie and to try to understand where he was coming from. So really interesting film. Now, this film has a lot of drinks in it. And I don't just mean alcoholic drinks, I just mean every scene, not every scene, many scenes have David Bowie drinking something or with a drink right near him. And I like that. I'm a person who always has a beverage nearby, so I keyed into that. But I thought the drinks were weird. One caveat on this, I realized that David Bowie did have some substance abuse issues at times in his career, and so one of these will make reference to that. It's not making light of that in any way. It's just an interesting thing to drink. Same with the other drinks, whether or not he drank too much of them or you do, that's not what this is about. It's just about how they showed up in the film, and enough of them and in interesting enough ways to make me think, hey, there's a lot of drinks in that picture. So the first one, and this is the strangest one, is when he was in his large cocaine phase, which lasted for a number of years. He got rather paranoid and strange, and they don't talk about this in the picture at all. You just sort of see it, and then later it's like, oh, he had addiction problems. So like I said, it's not detail heavy, right? But he went through a phase for a while where all he would eat is peppers and drink milk. And that's apparently all he lived off of. There's some guy on the internet who always makes a big deal whenever anyone says that. It's like, no, here's a picture of him eating a sandwich in a studio. Like, yes, he ate other things, but he largely ate peppers and milk. And there are repeated scenes in this of him at various interviews and things with either a whole gallon of milk or like multiple pint glasses full of milk, just getting into it. One time there's apparently a fly in the gallon of milk, and like that, it turns into a metaphor, but I think it's actually there too. I don't know what any of that's about, but he was really into milk for a period. So this is drink 1, milk. Well, it tastes a lot like milk. If you like milk, it's fine. I've got nothing. Drink 2, there's one shot, and I don't know what this video is from because it's not like an interview. It doesn't, maybe it's a part of some art picture or an intro to something, but it's him like stumbling around a bedroom trying to get a drink, and he has like 2 separate full sets of bars on either end of the room. And all he manages to succeed in doing is just taking a big martini glass and just pouring some Beefeater's gin in it. So this is drink number 2. This is the classic martini glass full of Beefeater gin. Smells like Beefeater gin. Let's see how it tastes. Tastes a lot like Beefeater gin. So Beefeater, very popular gin. It's not my favorite. It's a little bit citrus heavy, with then a softer note that sort of develops into the juniper. It ends up with a lot of juniper in the back of the palate, which kind of lingers there. But the front of the palate is very citrus forward, a little bit tart. It's a crisp gin. A lot of folks love it. It's affordable. No hate, but it's not my general favorite. On to drink number 3. This one, it's not 100% sure what it is, but I'm fairly clear what happened here. At one point, he's served by an assistant or something with what I believe is a martini. But it's served in a way that to me feels very authentic to what someone would do in the 70s, which is essentially you'd have one drink that you make, and it'd be something that's fine but not that interesting, like a dry martini. And then he had this fancy glass shaker where it appeared that someone had built like 5 martinis worth of martinis in it at some point. And then just throughout the day, when he wanted another one, you just give it a quick reshake and then pour that in. So you can hear mine still has some ice in it. His, I'm not even sure if there was still ice in that. So it's this sort of weird, really watered down, just sitting around martini all day. That just feels like a thing that definitely people would have done in the 70s. Anyone who wasn't making Harvey Wallbangers would just have a big pre-made jug of martini. Let's try the dry martini. This is Beefeater and Dawn Dry. Also, it's so hazy because of the shaking. Yeah, so mine's still pretty cold. There's still some ice chunks in there. It's definitely a bit diluted because I have had them sitting in there for 15 minutes while I set up the rest of the shot. It's fine. Beefeater's a very drinkable gin in a martini. I think because of that citrus element, it cuts through, and so sometimes a dry vermouth martini, especially if you have a fairly high ratio of vermouth, can get a little bit too in the herbs and the bitterness. I think that the brightness of Beefeater works okay here. I'd still choose something else, but it's nice. Nothing against it. And then finally, we don't see this drink until it's gone, but what I can only assume was a gin and tonic, because A, we're on a bit of a gin theme, and B, we see a sort of sad, half-squeezed lime wedge hanging out at the bottom of the drink with some ice in one scene. So this, I believe, is a gin and tonic. This is Beefeater again. I thought we'd stay on theme with Q's tonic, and half a lime squeezed in there as well as this little half-squeezed sad thing. And that's, of course, a great drink. Again, Beefeater would definitely not be my choice in a gin and tonic. I think that the citrus notes are lost by adding actual citrus to the drink, so you end up with the fact that otherwise the front of palate on Beefeater is fairly anonymous, and so you do get a little bit of the other botanicals acting with the tonic. You get that sort of fun Christmassy thing that happens when juniper and tonic meet. But I think that the front of the drink is really muted, but otherwise delicious. What an enjoyable beverage the gin and tonic is. No thank you. So that's it for this incredibly weird and short episode of Shaking and Sipping. We'll be back, of course, on our regularly scheduled Thursdays for our regular episodes. Until then, happy sipping. Pour a gin. Cheers.